What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and today we're going to be looking at some of your teams that you guys submitted over on the Patreon. The people that, support the channel, keep the lights on down here in the basement. One of their perks on Patreon is that they can submit a team for me, and then every 2, 3, 4 weeks, I'm going to have one of these videos where I don't know what I want to call this yet. Basement Breakdowns is a decent name, but I don't know, it just sounds kind of corny. But at the end of the day, what I'm doing here is I'm taking 3 patrons' teams, looking at them and answering whatever questions they have between what should I be doing with this team, what direction should I be going in, what moves would you make, how do you feel about this trade, all of that good stuff. So we're going to dive into 3 teams today, all of them pretty different, not like the last one where they were all pretty much in the same productive struggle type boat. We have one team today with 9 2023 first. I think that's going to be what the title is about, but we have a lot to get into today. We're going to break down 3 different teams. You guys loved the last one, so if you enjoyed this one, make sure you go down below, subscribe, leave a like. Let's go.
Thirsty, trying to choose. I know I'm critical. My nitty bag.
Now, the first team we're going to go over today, he wanted to stay anonymous, so we're just going to call this team number 1. Now, we're going to put his team on the screen here, and let's break down what this screenshot actually is before we go any further, because it's pretty loaded. Now, we have each position, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, all ordered by keep, trade, cut value, so you kind of have a spot where you can kind of see in an ordered fashion based on dynasty value each of those positions. Then I highlighted any player that I have as a soft sell or a hard buy for this team, just basically going off of your team needs or just how I have that reflected in the rankings. And then we have the rookie picks over there on the edge there, where you can see the 104, the 2023 first, the 2023 second, all of that good stuff. And then my favorite part of these breakdowns is the best way to kind of see where your team is at for 2022 is that starting lineup tab. And I go into Underdog, that's what UD position rank is, and I pretty much make your best 2022 lineup per Underdog ADP, so you can kind of see where your team is at for 2022. I think it's the best way to kind of, as a dynasty player, sort of identify the edges, where we were talking about this yesterday or 2 days ago, where Gabriel Davis is the wide receiver 25 in redraft, but he's the wide receiver like 45 in Dynasty, and he's going into year 3. So that's actually kind of a market inefficiency there. You can find a lot of really good stuff from Underdog. These are all $25 high stakes drafts, must be 18 to enter. So it's very efficient ADP. It's a good way to practice for your home leagues in the summer. It's a good way to go in there and have a crack at $2 million up top on the Best Ball Mania 3 tournament. I already have like 20 entries in there. We're going to be doing a live stream, I believe tomorrow on Saturday, of me going in there and firing a shot at $2 million. So as always, if you want to hop on Underdog, get life-changing money, make sure you use promo code RON when you deposit. They will match your deposit up to $100. So $10 to get you $10, $50, they will match $50 in your account. You'll have $100 to have like 4 entries in the Best Ball Mania 3 tournament. So a lot of cool stuff. Underdog, one of the biggest supporters of this channel. So with all of that in mind, we are looking at Team 1, his entire roster, and this is a dynasty league that is pretty, I wouldn't say vanilla, but it's a 10-team dynasty, 1 quarterback league, 0.5 PPR, and the starting lineup is a quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, a tight end, and 3 flexes. Now, this is what he had to say when he messaged me in the DMs. He said, I'm definitely a contender, but I'm going to be getting Treylon Burks or Drake London at the 104 because the guy at the 102 loves Jamison Williams and Kenneth Walker. He said, I feel like my wideouts and flex are good, but I don't have a single wideout that I believe has top 10 upside, which I kind of would disagree with. I think that T. Higgins, Metcalf, and Deontay Johnson all have top 10 upside. I think top 5 upside is probably a better way to word that. He said he has a bunch of wide receiver 2s. I'm going to die on the hill of CMC, Saquon, and Javonte, by the way, but would love one more elite piece of production at wide receiver or running back. Also, should I try to trade Goddard and a first for Mark Andrews in a non-tight end premium? That's a loaded question. That's like a 4-part short answer essay type question I would get in like an AP history class. But we're going to sort of go, bullet point by bullet point, kind of answer these questions. And let's first kind of sort of assess where the team's at. And I would say that this team is definitely a like fringe playoff, like contending team, or I would actually say very firm contending team. You have Christian McCaffrey, you have DeAndre Swift, Javonte Williams, Saquon Barkley, T. Higgins, Deontay Johnson, DK Metcalf. That is a lot of, premium assets where McCaffrey's the RB2, Swift is the RB8. You have a top 12 wide receiver, 2 top 24 wide receivers. In your flex, you have Javonte and Saquon, who are both top 15 running backs. Again, this is a contender. This is a really strong team. It's not how I build my teams. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say, sell all of your running backs and build like a hero RB type construction, because I don't think that that is the move. I do think that if you have a team like this where you have 4 really strong running backs, it is it's fragile. That is kind of it is kind of similar to a hyper fragile build like in a best ball. The only issue is you kind of open yourself up to, like last year, imagine having McCaffrey, Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, J.K. Dobbins going into the year. You'd be sitting pretty at that point. All of that falls apart. Or like substitute Dobbins for Cam Akers. But I mean, you can get a huge payoff as well, where if you had a team like this last year and it ended up being like Jonathan Taylor, Austin Eckler, Najee Harris, those kind of guys. So it's very hit or miss. It's a high upside play. And you guys know I like high upside plays. It's not terrible at all. I also think that in a 0.5 PPR league, it's not a bad strategy at all to be this running back heavy. I put Javonte Williams and DeAndre Swift as soft sells here because they are the only RBs on this team I can really justify selling. I love McCaffrey and Saquon at their prices. I don't think that they're sells at all. But with DeAndre Swift and Javonte Williams, two guys that I like, but are both valued at RB3 and RB4 in Dynasty, that's probably their value ceiling. And I also think that they are, on a contending team like this, where running back's already a strength, their roster value, right, that RB3, RB4, like high-end second in a startup type value, is probably best used elsewhere, especially in a one quarterback league where you don't have to worry about that super flex spot. It's a little bit of a shallower starting lineup where you just want to, submit the best lineup every single week. I think that you could probably take a guy like Javonte or Swift. I think that both of those guys are movable. And another piece I think is pretty movable that I actually like, again, I like Swift, I like Javonte, but there's certain team builds where it makes sense to get rid of these players that you might like. Another one is Zach Wilson, who I like, but in a one quarterback league where you have Deshaun Watson and Kirk Cousins, I think you have more than enough resources at quarterback to be just fine. Now, you're not going to get anything crazy from Zach Wilson in the trade market, but he's at least something you can package to go out there, maybe package Javonte, package Zach Wilson, and like 23 seconds for a Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase type, who is arguably like a 101 in one quarterback dynasty, right? So you can have the 101 in one quarterback dynasty, who's also a top 3 wide receiver in a Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson, and boom, now instead of being like super fragile, you let's say get rid of Javonte Williams, you now have DK Metcalf in that flex spot, then you move Jefferson or Jamar Chase up to that wide receiver 1 spot. I think that's probably a prettier way to assemble this team. But if you want to go even more redraft, or not even redraft, just like contending heavy, and not go all in on this year, because I don't think this is even really an all-in type move. But another deal you can kind of get done here is I'm using the Dynasty League Football trade calculator just because Adico's trade search gets a little bit hairy when you put multiple players on each side. So, right, we have like Javonte, a 2023 second, and Zach Wilson. It's hard to filter a trade like that when you're trying to use packages. So you guys flame me in the comments for Keep Trade Cut. We're going to use Dynasty League Football's trade calculator for this video. Let me know what you guys think of it. But another move that they think that you can do, instead of like Javonte, Zach Wilson in like 2023 seconds, by the way, 2023 seconds or just seconds in general, like future seconds, I will always be fine to use those to just grease the wheel on any of these types of deals where you're getting into premium assets that are going to help you contend and win buy-in money. I think that is generally plus EV. I am much more, firsts, and then everything else I don't care. If you want to take my player in a second and let me get an upgrade, like if you want to let me send like Aaron Rodgers in a second for like Jalen Hurts, I'll do that all day long. Another avenue you can kind of go down is like Javonte, a 2023 second, and Zach Wilson for something like Deebo Samuel, who's the wide receiver 7 in redraft, but then you can also get a running back on top, which I kind of really like this idea here. It's a little bit more fragile, it's a little bit more contending heavy, but I don't mind the idea of taking Javonte, a 23 second, Zach Wilson, maybe another 23 second, and go out there and get somebody in that Deebo Samuel range, and then also get a running back in return. So you can replace that Javonte production with like a Leonard Fournette, a James Conner, and Aaron Jones, while also adding on top of that a wide receiver 1 that you want. So you don't lose any production from losing Javonte, because Javonte is one of those rare assets where his roster value is way more than his redraft value. So for selling him, you can still replace that value in your lineup while also getting another meaningful starter like a Deebo Samuel in your lineup. With a guy like Deebo Samuel, it could be somebody else, like a T. Higgins, or it could be a DK Metcalf, AJ Brown, anybody in that area. I'm not saying 1 for 1 is what these trades need to be, but something in that area. Now, a similar deal to this is one other option I would go with, which is replacing Deebo with a 2023 first, and instead putting Mike Evans in there, who's the wide receiver 9 in redraft ADP. So Deebo's the wide receiver 7, Mike Evans is the wide receiver 9. You only go 2 spots down. You can get Mike Evans, Leonard Fournette, and a 2023 first for Javonte, a 2023 second, and Zach Wilson. So let's say you make that Deebo Samuel deal. This is how the team would look, which is pretty wild. You would have Deshaun Watson at quarterback, McCaffrey, Swift, Deebo, T. Higgins, Deontay Johnson, Dallas Goedert, Leonard Fournette, Saquon Barkley, DK Metcalf through the flex. You'd have the RB2 overall, 2 top 12 options at wide receiver. Then you'd have top 20 options all the way through the flex in a 10-team league. I imagine this would have to be one of the best teams out there. So again, a deal I really like is taking Javonte or Swift. Ideally Javonte, just because Javonte has a lesser projection this year. But you take Javonte, like a 2023 second, Zach Wilson, and you go out there, get somebody in that Deebo Samuel, Diggs, A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf, something, or not DK Metcalf, you already have Metcalf, but somebody in like that top 10 wide receiver discussion between like Diggs, Deebo, A.J. Brown, somebody maybe even in the range of like Diggs, Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, something in that area, plus a running back on top, or again, that like Mike Evans type deal, plus a running back in like a 2023 first. I think that is the move. I think the move is to take Javonte and split him into an elite wide receiver and a startable RB2 like Fournette, Aaron Jones, James Conner. Now, the last question that was on the original message was that he wanted to ask if he should be sending out sending out Goddard and a first for Mark Andrews in a non-tight end premium. My answer is probably not. On this team, I think I'd be firmly holding on to those 2023 first. You know, the 104, let's hold on to that. Just take a wide receiver, add to your wide receiver depth. 2023 first, hold on to that. Your 2024 first, keep all of those intact. I really think that it's important to, unless if it makes sense, I think that the only ideal way for me to have to give up a 2023 first or just any future first in general is to acquire an elite quarterback in a super flex league. That's really the only area where I can justify trading away a future first. Now, I will say, instead of a Mark Andrews though, you can go after like a Travis Kelce or George Kittle in a non-tight end premium league. I saw a trade go down on Adico's trade tool that was Dallas Goedert and the 209 for Travis Kelce. So if you can do, again, those 2023 seconds, I love trading those away pretty much. If you can take like Dallas Goedert in a 2023 second and go get Travis Kelce, who is pretty much a tight end one in redraft, I think that's a fine move to make there. But again, I like the idea of taking Swift or Javonte, Zach Wilson, package up like a second or two, and then finding an elite wide receiver option plus like a cheap RB2. And then also, if you want to upgrade tight end, I would just add a second to Goddard and try and see if you can sort of get in there for Kelce or Kittle. But that's it. I don't think that the Dallas Goedert to Kelce or Kittle is necessary, though. I think the team is pretty much fine without that move. Moving on to the next team, we have an OG patron that's been here for a while. 1234, I declare thumb war. He also had a submission for the last video that didn't make the cut, so I'm actually pretty happy that he ended up winning the sort of like lottery that we do. And this is what he said. I had the startup in this league last summer. I think I drafted pretty well and probably have made about 30 to 40 trades, and this is where I'm at. Obviously, I'm pretty happy with how things have played out to this point. I am trying to figure out where to go after next year. I am leaning towards trying to get Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, JSN, Kayshon Boutte, Michael Mayer, and maybe another running back or quarterback. I would then like to use the other firsts as trade bait to upgrade a position, likely quarterback, maybe tight end. The 2023 firsts I am missing are mostly better teams that I expect to make playoffs or barely miss them. Wondering your thoughts on this strategy. So this team is really interesting. This is a 12 team, but also another one quarterback league PPR. And this is a really interesting team as a fringe playoff starting lineup, but is also backloaded with 9 2023 firsts, which is just absolutely wild to kind of wrap your head around here. I have a couple thoughts. And my first is I wouldn't even put names to those picks. I know that you mentioned Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs and all those guys. For now, like I don't put faces to my future firsts, right? They're just currency to me to be cashed out later on in either a rookie player or trade them away. In a league like this, where I think it's really important that we key in on just like the starting lineup where it's one quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, a tight end, and the flex. That's a really shallow starting lineup for a dynasty league. That is what I think, like 8 roster spots, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now I know that he said that he has IDP spots, but I just don't really care about IDP. I'm sure the IDP, everybody's pretty much on a similar playing field in terms of IDP. I think it's like 2 IDP spots. But when you have such a shallow lineup like that or roster, I almost don't really understand wanting to use like 6 or 7 rookie picks. I mean, you're going to be super deep, but in a league that is as shallow as this in terms of starting lineup, I don't see the appeal of adding like all of those rookies on top of what you already have to this team. Now, I know you said like you take a couple and you can sort of upgrade here and there, but in terms of my strategy, I wouldn't use all 9 of those on players / like roster upgrades. I know you said like to use like 6 on players and like a couple here and there to upgrade your quarterback or running back or tight end. With this team where you have 9 2023 firsts and then you also have 0 2024 firsts, I think that you should probably put away 1 to 2 of those 2023 firsts and just plan to trade out of the first round and acquire 2024 first in the process. Maybe get like 1 or 2 in terms of actionable things to do right now, because trading into 2024, don't worry about that until you're on the clock, like on the day of the 2024 rookie draft. You don't have to worry about trading to that next class this far out. My first instinct with these kinds of teams where you stockpile all of these 2023 firsts and you have a pretty starting lineup like this one where you have a fringe top 12 quarterback in Trey Lance, RB8 in Swift, a fringe RB2 in Dillon, CeeDee Lamb, A.J. Brown, Judy to fill out those 3 wide receiver spots, Elijah Moore, Kenneth Walker, Brandon Ayuk in the flex, and Albert O at tight end. you have a fringe playoff lineup where you'll probably get in like the like 5th to 8th area with that team. And my usual answer is with a team like this is to just try and limp into the playoffs in 2022 and then dominate in 2023 with all of your firsts. Again, if this was a traditional team, I would say, take like AJ Dillon, who I don't love at his cost, Komet, maybe, package up like a future third or something, and try and, package AJ Dillon and Cole Komet into like a Fournette plus, something among those lines. So like Aaron Jones plus, James Conner plus. But this is kind of a unique spot with how shallow these starting lineups are. And again, usually a Dynasty league will have 2 more flex spots and then also a super flex spot. So I think when you have a lineup this shallow in non-super flex, I think sitting on 9 2023 first here is probably overkill. Like, this is a team with good enough players and enough roster value to be the best team on paper in 2022, while also having like 3 to 5 2023 firsts as well. And again, this is a really unusual recommendation for me, but I love to hoard those 2023 firsts. But I think this is a unique spot where you have 9 2023 firsts, a shallow starting lineup. Like you have enough 2023 firsts to fill a starting lineup up, and then also have Trey Lance, Justin Fields, DeAndre Swift, Kenneth Walker. And of course, that'd be like a super like juggernaut type team down the line. Again, though, you can like miss on like half of those picks. Again, I think that this team is a no-brainer. It will be dominant in 2023. I think that you are in a spot where you can kind of identify your mid to late 2023 firsts and spend some of them. Like, I would literally go shopping. Like, I would take a player that you have that isn't in your starting lineup or isn't firmly in your starting lineup, pretty much any player not named DeAndre Swift, CeeDee Lamb, AJ Brown, add a 2023 first to them and get an upgrade. So here is 5 trades that I kind of went out on the Dynasty League Football trade calculator and kind of looked at for myself. And if you could do like all 5 of these deals, again, not word for word, bar for bar, these exact trades, but something in this area. So the first one I have is Kenneth Walker in a 2023 first. Boom, you get Christian McCaffrey. Now, I will say, again, I don't love these kinds of deals. These are, I want to say Scott Connor kind of coined these as like 60-40 or like 70-30. I can't remember what he kind of had it named as, but where you pretty much make a bet against a player and you offload like a McCaffrey for Kenneth Walker in a 2023 first. Now, I think most people would want that side of the deal. But again, on a team like this, I think you can just go shopping. You can go Kenneth Walker in a 2023 first and get McCaffrey. Boom. Now you have the RB2 and the RB8 at your running back positions. You can then go and take one of your 2023 firsts, AJ Dillon, Cole Komet, grab Mark Andrews. Boom. Now you have an elite tight end. You can then take Trey Lance and Justin Fields in a 2023 second, grab Lamar Jackson in a 1 quarterback league. Now, again, I don't know if the Lamar Jackson owner will be into that. I think somebody who's rebuilding would be. So any of Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, any of those guys, Mahomes, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, any of those guys, you can make a deal similar to this, where you take Trey Lance, Justin Fields, a draft pick, and you go get an elite quarterback in a 1 quarterback league where it shouldn't be too expensive to acquire those from a rebuilding team. Then you have a guy like Jerry Jeudy, who is nice. He's a top 24 option, but I think this team could use like one more. Like, you can pay for a wide receiver 1. So you can take Jerry Jeudy in a 2023 first, grab Deebo Samuel. You can also take Brandon Ayuk, who I think is a great flex option on this team as well, which I didn't even talk about earlier, but this team is like, it's already pretty deep, where you have Elijah Moore in the flex spot. You have Ayuk coming off the bench. You have Ty Davis Price and Kenneth Walker coming off the bench. Albert O or like Cole Komet coming off the bench. You have a lot of depth here already. I would just take those pieces out of 2023 first and just start buying players. Like, you can go Jerry Jeudy in a 2023 first for Deebo. You can go Ayuk in a 2023 first for Diggs, Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, any of those guys. Now, all of those moves can't be done that exact way. But if you do something similar to that, you could still have 5 2023 firsts and have a team that looks like this. You would have Lamar Jackson, McCaffrey, DeAndre Swift, Stephon Diggs, CeeDee Lamb, Deebo Samuel, Mark Andrews, and AJ Brown in your starting lineup. You would have top 3 options at quarterback and tight end, top 12 options through the rest of your team with Elijah Moore and Albert O coming off the bench. You can always use a 2023 first if you need more depth or something like that. But again, your lineup is so shallow. I think you're probably doing your league mates a solid by not trying to compete with using like half of those 2023 first. So I don't think that this is probably the answer that you wanted, but I think it's probably I think it's a wasted buy-in to sit on those assets again, when I think that you could just, like, instead of wanting to set it up like perfectly where you go all in 2023 and do all that, I think you can just spend half of those picks, 4 to 5, and get upgrades. Take the rest of your picks where you now have 4 to 5, and you can use, your early first on guys like Bijan, JSN, Gibbs, right? Get like 2 to 3 of those guys, and then use like 2 of your firsts to get like 2 picks in the 2024 first round. And then boom, you have like the best lineup in the league. You have 2 picks in 2024 or 2 firsts in 2024. I imagine your 2025s are unscathed at this point. That's probably how I would do it. I don't think it's the most efficient way to do it, right? It's kind of rushing the rebuild a little bit. It is not great bets to use like player plus 2023 first and go buy an upgrade. But I think that this is a unique spot where I would usually sort of frown upon splurging your 2023 first this far out. I think it makes sense. I think you have too many and too shallow of a starting lineup to not spend a ton of those and go win in 2022. Now, this last team we're going to talk about is from Hoagie, who is playing in a 12-team Superflex Dynasty PPR 1.5 tight end premium league. This is back to basics. This is a vanilla league. This is pretty much the leagues that I am in. Start 10, tight end premium, perfect. So if you guys didn't play in one quarterback or don't play in one quarterbacks leagues, you didn't really find those first two teams helpful, here is a Superflex league. And this team is really solid. He has two 2023 firsts. He has his 2024 class and beyond intact. And he has a perfect running back duo in Jonathan Taylor and James Conner, where you spend up for the RB1, which I like, and then you just get a cheap RB2 that is going to give you fine production in James Conner. His wide receivers are great with A.J. Brown, Michael Pittman, McLaurin. Goddard is great at tight end. Then he just has a ton of depth as well in that flex spot where you can go to Antonio Gibson, Gabriel Davis, Darnell Mooney, Sky Moore, Michael Thomas, Michael Gallup, Ramondre Stevenson, Devin Singletary, to pretty much be absolutely fine in those two flex spots. And the clear issue here is at quarterback. And that is why I have Jameis Winston, Carson Wentz, Matt Corral, all guys that I don't even have as sells, but I think on this team that they are sells as sell. He said, I think my biggest weakness is probably elite quarterback production and quarterback longevity. I just have a bunch of mediocre quarterbacks that lack long-term job security. That's what I'm saying. He has, not only does he have two quarterbacks in his starting lineup outside of the top 20, so Jameis Winston and Ryan Tannehill at QB 22 and QB 23, but he has like 40 quarterbacks that are kind of in that no man's range of not long-term starters, near-term producers. Like literally all of them are that same archetype besides Corral. Now the tricky part here is you can't just offload like Wentz, Jameis Winston, and Matt Corral for Kirk Cousins. No one wants to take on three quarterbacks in a deal, especially three quarterbacks that aren't difference makers at the position. So I think it makes sense to probably offload one of those guys between Jameis Winston, Carson Wentz, Matt Corral. They have the most value among your quarterbacks. They have about the same amount of production. I don't want to sell Ryan Tannehill. I think that he is the easiest path to top 12 type numbers as a guy that was the QB 14 last year and has finished in the top 12 numerous times. Those are the guys I want to offload. And then the biggest sell for me among the flexes I listed earlier, who probably has the most trade value, is Antonio Gibson. So if you take Antonio Gibson and like one of Jameis, Wentz, Corral, I think you can go out there and spend up for something like a Jalen Hurts. And I put this on Keep Trade Cut. This is Gibson plus Jameis Winston for Jalen Hurts. And this actually has team two favorites. So the Jameis Winston and Antonio Gibson side, I would even go as far to add a 2023 mid-second on the Jameis Gibson side for Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is the cheapest elite quarterback you can go out there and buy, not named Tom Brady, who's pretty much on his last leg. Jalen Hurts is neck and neck with Joe Burrow for 2022 ADP. He is the QB7. So you can go out there, take a flex guy. You can take your old QB1, put them together, get a QB7, like an actual difference-making quarterback. I think that he is probably the most acquirable difference-making quarterback with actual like long-term prospects at the position. Now, that's not going to be super easy. Other quarterbacks I would probably be trying to get into are guys like Tom Brady, Matt Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, all in that area of taking Antonio Gibson plus to get to one of those guys and maybe even put a plus on their end. The other question is what do you do with the rest of those quarterbacks? Let's say you make that deal, and now you have Hurts, Tannehill, Carson Wentz, Matt Corral, Jimmy Garoppolo, Mitch Trubisky, Sam Darnold, Gardner Minshew, Cam Newton. It's honestly tough to say. I don't think that I would just start trying to sell them all at will. I think that at this point you can kind of just roster them after making that upgrade. And I think that the move here is that after making that one upgrade to get an elite quarterback, difference-making type producer for your lineup in 2022, I think the move from there is to kind of just hold them and sell them for higher prices in season. Like quarterbacks are going to get hurt. We saw it last year. QBs got hurt, and then you see people spring up, or players, quarterbacks spring up like Taylor Heineke, Jameis Winston, Teddy Bridgewater, Tyler Huntley, Cam Newton, all sort of have their value spike mid-season. So that's what I'd keep my eye on. I'd wait till mid-season. I'd go out there to the owner. The first major injury at quarterback that we see, we saw Lamar Jackson miss 6 games last year. The first major quarterback injury you see, you go to that owner and you say, hey man, I have a bunch of quarterbacks you might be interested in between Wentz, Matt Corral, Jimmy Garoppolo, Mitch Trubisky, whoever. Maybe one of those guys is actually balling out of their mind to start the year. It wouldn't be that insane, but I think that's what I would do with the rest of them. Now, I love that initial move of sending a Gibson away because you do have so many flex options where if you lose Gibson, still having Mooney, Michael Thomas, Sky Moore, Gabriel Davis, Michael Thomas, I already said Michael Thomas, Michael Gallup, Ramondre Stevenson, Devin Singletary, losing Antonio Gibson is just a pebble in the ocean for this team. He's not a huge difference maker for this team. So again, Gibson plus a quarterback for Jalen Hurts, Brady, Stafford, Aaron Rodgers. Again, if it's Brady, Stafford, or Aaron Rodgers, it'd kind of be different valuations from there. Now, that's going to do it for us today. That is 3 teams that we broke down here. I think that we'll call this basement breakdowns, but I don't know. I don't think I'll make the titles basement breakdowns ever. I'll probably just sort of make it something about what I covered in the video. So let me know. This is the second part of this. Let me know how you guys felt about it. If I could, kind of make it better, if there's a better way to kind of structure this for you guys to digest. But I think that we kind of went over some solid things here. Now, with that being said, if you want your team to get looked at, to get broken down, to get sauced up in whatever is the next basement breakdowns video I do, whether that's in like a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, make sure you join the Patreon, patreon.com/Ron Stewart. Everybody in there gets access to my rankings, all of that cool stuff. And on top of that, if you want to have a team entered into one of these breakdowns, that is also a perk to kind of get entered into that lottery. So with that being said, as always, if you enjoyed the video, make sure you go down below, subscribe, leave a like, and I will see you guys in the next one.
I got the juice, I got the juice. Channel, Chatham's on. Foolies glad I'm home. Even my haters kinda glad I'm on. Rest in peace to my vagabond. Rapper, song, singer, suspended, subpoena for misdemeanors.